disrupted.
America that I fought.
Weird thing to happen. Hello, one and all. Welcome to this edition of Kitz Corner. Been a fantastic day so far. So the New York Times had a moment, a little profile in courage. This is the New York Times at its best when they release their opinion pages, and one of them makes you basically want to vomit inside your own mouth. Because, you know, the New York Times favors the establishment, it favors the bureaucracy, it favors whatever political power best represents their, careers, their ideologues, their business model. And here is the New York Times at its best when an opinion piece comes out saying it turns out the deep state is actually kind of awesome. Like I said, a real profile in courage. A video by Adam Westbrook and Lindsay Krause. This is the New York Times at its finest moment. It's kind of awesome. God's sakes, who wrote this headline? A 6-year-old thinking that Deep State was a new punk rock band? Like, they're going to open for Backstreet Boys. They're awesome. What up? Woo woo. Who doesn't like unelected bureaucrats that decide the fate of humanity? Yeah. I can make up so many jokes about the headline itself, but the video is even worse. And here's just a little sneak peek of this.
Donald Trump is obsessed with the deep state.
The deep state is destroying our nation.
Either the deep state destroys America or we destroy the deep state.
And many Republicans are widening his paranoia.
These unelected bureaucrats ruining this country.
From a cabal of security agents to
the sick political class that hates our country.
If elected, Trump's vowed to gut the federal government.
Reinstate the Schedule F executive order and, quote, fire rogue bureaucrats.
But who are these bureaucrats and what makes them so dangerous? We needed answers, so we took a trip across America.
In 100 yards, take the exit.
In search of the people behind this threatening entity. First stop, Huntsville, Alabama. Sure looks like some nefarious government activity happens around here.
You have reached your destination.
Meet Scott Bellamy.
I am a mission manager in the Planetary Missions Program Office.
He drives a Nissan Titan 4x4. He's loved Star Trek since he was a kid.
Of course I have a favorite character. It's either Captain Kirk or Mr. Spock.
And he may have quite literally saved the planet from annihilation.
Potentially.
You see, Scott managed a mission called
the Double Asteroid Redirection Test.
And back in 2022, his team used your tax dollars to pull off something kind of incredible.
You have an asteroid and you have a spacecraft, and you fly the spacecraft into the asteroid and try to change the trajectory of that asteroid. It's like playing pool in space. Everybody was holding their breath. This is the moment of truth. Did we hit it?
We got it?
And we have impact. We found the first.
They knocked an asteroid off its course, proving something that had previously only been done in movies.
So the New York Times, in their deep uncovering of the deep state that Donald Trump is threatening, went to a space program and talked about asteroids. Like, this is the classic New York Times. Like, they try to we found this great unraveling story. It's so massive. We finally exposed the deep state that Donald Trump's mentioning, and he's attacking these people, and then you just go to nothing. You go to nothing. No mention about, hey, what about the WEF? What about the CIA? What about Klaus Schwab? What about Bill Gates? How they're controlling countries. How there's a mafia man at the top of the universe that's controlling countries. Everybody knows this because we see it out in the open. It's very obvious to people. New York Times will not cover that. The New York Times is trying to make a joke out of this. They're saying Trump's mentioning about the deep state and unelected bureaucrats. oh, there's an intelligence community. Let's go talk to this guy in a space program and talk about how he blew up asteroids with lasers. This is classic New York Times BS. This is classic goddamn. And the people that there's a certain group of people that read the New York Times, and this is definitely the approach to them. This is the absurdity. This is the people that read the New York Times, so the upper class kind of stick their nose out of everything and try to make a mockery at the fact that there are unelected bureaucrats. There are people behind the presidency. There are people that are in control of the country. And I wish I had this a clip rolled up about this, but Chuck Schumer, when he said to Donald Trump that the CIA and the FBI, the intelligence agencies, have 9 ways of Sunday to take you down to the president, that exposed the deep state. The war machine, the fact that Trump said we're there for oil, exposes the deep state. That is why Donald Trump is such a threat to the establishment, is because he's such a wild card. He exposes the deep state. He lets people know that there is a deep state and acknowledges that. New York Times will at least acknowledge it and then go to complete nonsense. Instead of actually investigating, reporting, and talking about the fact that the WEF, the WHO, Bill Gates, other people, the globalist leaders that are really in control of this, are manipulating you day to day, every minute and every second you're on this earth.
Saving the world from an Armageddon scenario, potentially.
Next, we traveled deep into the swamp itself, Washington, D.C.
You have arrived.
This is Radhika Fox.
I am the Assistant Administrator for Water at the Environmental Protection Agency.
I wish I had the rest of this clip here. But I bet you they're not going to mention Flint, Michigan. I bet you there's not going to be a mention about East Palestine, Ohio. I bet you they're not going to mention that the EPA that started under Richard Nixon, believe it or not. Richard Nixon came up with the Environmental Protection Agency. I bet you there's no mention about the fact of how easily corrupted this organization has become, to the point that the contaminants and the poisons and the pollution that they're supposed to be fighting against to protect people for safe drinking water has completely been exploited. How we have fossil fuel investors into the Environmental Protection Agency to focus on tackling climate change. What a joke protecting the environment has become. They're not going to mention this in the New York Times. They're not going to mention this in this opinion piece. They're trying to make it sound cutesy, like, oh, I'm just this innocent, governmental employee. I don't know anything about the deep state. This is such a goddamn joke. It's so absurd. It's ridiculous. It's like trying to get Jason Voorhees from Friday the 13th to track down serial killers. Like, you're getting the New York Times, who is deeply involved in the deep state. They are the deep state publication of choice, to investigate corruption in the government as they're getting funding to keep corruption alive and well within the government. Such absurdity. Such absurdity. And the fact that people still pay money to the New York Times to read opinion pieces like this. Like, that's so awesome. It's so awesome. By the way, they have no argument to say how awesome it is. All it's proven is that Donald Trump may have actually been right about something. Donald Trump, the game show host, the real estate tycoon billionaire, may have actually been on point when he said that there's unelected bureaucrats in the deep state that's threatening the lives and security of the rest of America. Maybe there's something to investigate there. The New York Times certainly acknowledged that there was a deep state, but they didn't actually take the time to investigate that. Meanwhile, you come to YouTube channels like this one, or Jimmy Dore, or Kim Iverson, or Russell Brand, or even Alex Jones, can easily break down that there is a deep state, and it's connected to a corrupted government. And that's one of the reasons why Joe Biden is the president. Joe Biden, who everyone obviously sees is a demented fool, he is the president of the United States because of the deep state. They're attacking Donald Trump with many impeachments, lawsuits, and tackling him with silence because of the deep state. They know how corrupted it is. The fact that Chuck Schumer went on MSNBC and told the president that you had to obey by the lines of the intelligence agencies shows you what a deep state we are in. We live in a fascist dictatorship, and the problem with that is that nobody is aware of the fascism. Nobody is aware of the deep state because it's not out in the open and obvious to them, because New York Times will never investigate it. Washington Post will never investigate it, because who's buying up the New York Times? Who's buying up the Washington Post? People in the deep state. Jeff Bezos owns the Washington Post. Jeff Bezos, who runs Amazon, but also has ties to the CIA. The New York Times bought out by people within the deep state. Bill Gates, who buys his funding to appear on television and buys programs like PBS so that their news hour can provide health facts. Bill Gates is buying airtime on PBS. There is goddamn a deep state. It's so obvious to people, and the people that don't see it right in the open are completely blind. Completely blindsided, and they're the ones that are going to get screwed over so hard. They need to acknowledge that there is a deep state. It's not awesome. It's a catastrophe. It's awful. It's disgusting. It's everything that is wrong with this country, everything that is wrong with the political discourse, everything that's used to oppress you is coming from the deep state. And the only reason they're telling you that's awesome is because the New York Times gets advertised with dollars. It keeps its funding, it keeps its broadcasting rights, and it keeps its publication rights under the deep state obedience. And the only reason they're going after Donald Trump is because Donald Trump is a wild card that would present you and acknowledge that there is a deep state, that there's people behind the presidency that are the true evil masterminds that are really control of the country, from economics to foreign affairs to water to housing to the homeless to everything. If you ever wonder why the border's still open, why there's thousands of migrants pouring in, the deep state has a huge impact on that. Why there's such a homelessness epidemic, the deep state is a part of that. Why we're in so many foreign wars overseas has nothing to do with us. The deep state is part of that. Why our economic system is shattering. Why so many middle classers are in near poverty while Wall Street is still surging. The deep state is part of that. It may not be obvious to the New York Times. It's obvious to us. And we're not going to get fooled and suckered in to think that's awesome. It's awesome that we have unelected governmental bodies that can easily propagandize, manipulate you, control you, oppress you, and screw you over. But that's a classic take from the New York Times. A real profile in courage, a real moment of true journalism that people pay, what, $4.95 a month or whatever, how much a subscription is. People pay to watch this, to see this garbage from the New York Times. And they think that it's awesome that we have unelected, unaccountable, untraceable, and uninvestigated master criminals that are destroying basically life on this earth. Yay.